assuming everyone's okay with that. There we go. Right, brilliant. So welcome back, and we are going to be talking about negotiation, one of my favorite subjects. What would be really fun is to get a sense of Tim, Michael, Ravi. Ravi, I think you might be overseas at the minute, so you may not be. Yeah, there you go. Come off of you. Just give us a number out of 10. 1 is it's all. 10 is I am brilliant. Just give me a sense of how comfortable you feel with negotiation. Michael, I'm going to drop you in the hot seat. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. I suppose for me, not being as a small company and not being the owner, I feel like a lot of the negotiation has to go through my MD and the owner of the company.
Yeah.
So in some ways that makes it easier for me. Well, in some ways easier, in some ways not.
Okay, so give me a number.
I'll probably say 8.
8? Okay. All right. I'm just gonna make a note about something because you have said something which struck a chord. Someone remind me about Bill Richardson if in a second, just in case I forget. Bill Richardson. Okay, so on that, so Michael scored an 8. Now I would have said, and we're in Yorkshire, and maybe that makes a difference, right, Michael. That puts us in a different, many of us in a different league. So, so Tim, give us generally in negotiation. How
puts you in a different? Why if you're Yorkshire, does it put you in a different category? Does it?
Yeah, that's a fair challenge. Is am I allowed to say this? Well, we're recording it, so and Ravi as well. The definition of a Yorkshireman, Michael, do you know this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a Yorkshireman, but I've lived here for 23 years, so yeah.
You're a trainee.
I know what you're going to say.
Oh, you do? Okay, the definition of a Yorkshireman, Tim, is a Scotsman stripped of their generosity.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me they're always right.
They generally, I have to say, when it comes to matters of cash, and you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not from Yorkshire, I'm a refugee from the south.
Yeah.
But when it comes to matters of cash, you know, it's just in the blood, and there we are. And
I was always told that those from Lincolnshire were like from Yorkshire, deeper pockets still.
But you know the theme of what we're talking about, right?
Yes. So I'm gonna sit on the fence, and I'm going to give you a figure of 5.
Okay, good. And you know, that's generally the sort of numbers that I kind of expect to hear. Now, Ravi, if you're comfortable, please feel free to chime in and give me a kind of number. But if you're happy sitting in background,
I would go for a 5 or 6. So not just being in the fence, but that's how I feel. It again varies, isn't it? Sometimes you can do a strong negotiation. Sometimes probably you're not in a position of negotiation, though you want to do it.
Yeah. Good shout. Thank you for that. So I'm going to give you a principle here. There's not much we can do in 30 minutes, but I'm really hoping I can give you something to think about, something to position in your head. But before we do that, something I hadn't factored into this, so I'm going to go through it really quickly, is Bill Richardson. Thanks for the reminder there, Michael. But Bill Richardson is a guy whose name you probably won't have heard of before, but you will certainly, I hope, have heard of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, of course, I think he's number 43 in terms of presidents of the United States, might be 42. Presidents of the United States. No one, and this is, Michael, this is kind of aimed at you because you might feel piggy in the middle sometimes because, you know, negotiation, P&L, stuff like that, you might feel that are not very powerful, because I've got to defer to
Yeah.
whoever the MD is. Bill Richardson, that was Clinton's chief negotiator. All the big stuff that was going on in the world, you can read up on about offline. Nobody could get to Clinton unless they persuaded Bill Richardson first. So in a way, that made him more powerful than the president. And there's a really subtle, well, maybe in some cultures it's not that subtle actually, but that can make you enormously powerful. And it's a way just to get the mindset right. And we all know the way companies work. Of course, sometimes you probably got a little bit of latitude, but for exceptional occasions, you may have to go to the boss, and but that still can make you powerful. Okay, well, I'm getting into it already, right? So Bill Richardson, you can read up about him. Okay, brilliant. Going to share my screen now. Let's try not to make this a lecture, and please, as usual, feel free to kind of chime in, because I'm learning as well here. The rules have been rewritten about much of this since the pandemic and working remotely. So I'd like to think got some good experience to bring to the table, but I haven't got the monopoly on wisdom. So hopefully now, just give us a thumbs up if you would, if you can see how to negotiate on your screen. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Okay, right. We don't need to do this now. You know about that. And okay, so yeah, last week, Ravi, you didn't catch us last week, no problem, but we talked about pursuit strategies for typically larger deals, but different deals. And so just summing up, you can't do it all on your own. You'll need the support of your personal networks and sometimes other people's networks as well. If it's a really big or really complicated deal, and actually, right on point, Michael, not always the most senior execs making the decision. So if there's a decision point is a point of negotiation on a deal, again, that can make you really powerful, both as a salesperson in a particular deal, but also, and it's especially when it comes to technology, often the technology decisions, which kind of router we're going to use, which kind of technology we're going to use, often made lower down the management chain. Policy, costs, things like that, higher up in the organization, but actual technical details, and maybe that were in for your world, Michael, it's specification of materials, things like that. Often those decisions are made, shall we say, lower down the management chain. I don't like to say food chain because that kind of it's not respectful. Okay, so especially in technology, and where this has been a lesson learned in action, if you like, is trying to win a big deal with Vodafone. Vodafone was my prospective customer. I was working for EDS, an outsourcer at the time. I lost two quite large deals on the way to winning a mega deal, and we talked about that, and why that was still a lesson learned and a valuable engagement. Right, on to this week then. So this is a best practice sales process. Sorry, best practice sales process. We're on to number 6 today. Negotiate and close. Now, typically in a formal sales training environment, I get negotiate and close in the same module because often we're moving between the two. We've only got 30 minutes, so I'm not going to be doing that today. We're going to do closing next week. Today is all about negotiation. So closing next week, the week after, is going to be around maximizing yield. And then question for you guys is I quite enjoying this. I'm going to be doing this on probably a weekly basis around this time. And I'd like to do a sales subject of the day. So if there's anything in particular, questions you've got, I'd like to be talking about that. It's helpful for me and my team in producing content. So that's the sort of quid pro quo of doing something like this. And it also helps me get into the discipline of taking whatever's in my head and sticking it down on a piece of paper. So that's the quid pro quo. Okay, so really important principle is negotiation actually shouldn't have to be that hard, because if you've done all the work that we've been talking about over the last 4 or 5 weeks around the right kind of leads are coming through, which is a way of qualifying the deals all along the process, then closing the sale really should be a natural conclusion to a well-qualified conversation. Unless you're in Yorkshire, of course, or it would appear to Lincolnshire with really deep pockets, then there's another bit of negotiation to come around. Okay, right. So when does a negotiation start? Is it at the time the customer says that's too expensive? I don't think so. I think it starts before that. Would anyone like to chime in and give me a sense of when that might start for them, when they think negotiation actually starts?
Well, when we have an initial phone call before we've even been to site, and we'll listen to what the customer wants, if they've got that idea, and I will often ask the question, how much do you want to spend on this? And I think at that point, there's a line in the sand already for us as a company of what we can do. And then when I do come to site, I can bring them similar schemes at a similar price and see what they can have. Okay,
that makes sense. So you kind of know whether you're testing the water, if you like,
Yeah.
you're talking the right kind of language. Tim, what about you?
Well, I would say that it starts right at the beginning, because you've actually got to qualify first whether you actually want them as a client.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Ravi.
So
sorry, Tim, I cut across you then. Tim.
No, that would be, the negotiation is, well, actually, are you a client that fits us? So so it was more like that sort of comes back to qualification. But assuming that they qualify, negotiation must be part of the whole process.
Yeah, that's a really good observation too. Ravi, is there anything you want to kind of offer in that area?
It really starts really at the beginning. When it's a start, it's about somebody who's giving something and somebody who's taking something. When the discussion starts, negotiation starts from then on.
Yeah.
And goes through till there's an agreement of somebody receiving something and somebody's getting something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good insight. And it's something I've kind of realized over the years. I think it's very early on in the process, even though you're not interacting, it's from the moment a prospective customer comes into contact with you or your brand, there is a form of negotiation, even though you're not actively involved in that. There's a form of qualification, negotiation, all of those kind of emotions, if you like, that are going on, often unsaid and unarticulated, but there's what I call the eyebrow test. Okay, so is if we're going to give our outsourcing business to Hewlett Packard, that would probably pass the eyebrow test. We're going to give all our IT outsourcing business to Keith Rosell, given it's not core competence of mine, that might raise a few eyebrows. So that has a lot to do with brand. And as soon as they've started engaging with your social media profile, because of the prevalence of information that's out there generally, and they're engaging with your social media profile, even though you may not know that, you may not have the tools or the tech landscape to help you understand that, though there's lots available on that front. But they're engaging with your brand somehow, even though they may not click. They could be what I call lurking, if you like, observing. One of my biggest customers that I won last year, I've been connected to for over 15 years.
Wow.
We worked together back in HP. She's never liked in terms of clicked on the button, liked or commented or reshared any of my LinkedIn stuff. But I got this message out of the blue from her. I've been watching you. It started. Well, that can go anywhere. But it was I really like stuff. Can we have a chat? And so that's kind of interesting. You just don't know who's interacting. So when you're sat in reception, if you're actually going, Michael, as you're going to see the customer, your whole demeanor, your deportment, your attitude, how you carry yourself, all of that, those non-verbal clues that we talked about a couple of sessions ago, that's all part of negotiation and having your first meeting often the same case. So by default, you've already set the tone. So make sure it's the best tone possible. Okay, let's get to the pound seat or Ravi. Dollars seat, rupee seat. I use pounds just for the colloquialism of the expression, if you like. It's talking about the principles of the balance of needs, and that's really important. Now, let's assume there's only just two parts. Actually, I'll give you a couple of examples first of all, but it's talking about this metaphorical balancing of needs and at what point does it become a deal and at what point is everybody, and by the key word here is satisfied. Everybody, that is the one word that should be able to be used by all the parties. Yes, we're satisfied with this deal. If one of the parties is thinking, God, we've been ripped off here, that deal is in jeopardy. In the form that it's currently taking, and you may be building up some resistance or some difficulty for yourself later on down the line. If somebody signs up to a deal that they're really not happy with, that it's unsustainable, that's going to cause you heartburn going forwards. So everybody needs to be satisfied. We may not be thrilled, might be lower margin, it might be slightly different terms than what we'd ideally hoped for, but we're at least satisfied. That's the overarching sort of emotion that needs to be at hand. Okay, so let's ask you a question. I've got a question for you. Let's talk about who's in the pound seat. Who's in the more powerful position here? You may recognize this. This is Salvator Mundi. The painter is called Leonardo da Vinci. One second. Yeah, Leonardo da Vinci. Who do you think? So this painting was recently, in the last 5 years or maybe 10 years, rediscovered and lying around someone's attic, metaphorically. Came to auction in went to Sotheby's in New York, I think. And so imagine we're in the auction room. Michael's the auctioneer, me, Tim, Ravi, we're in the audience. Who's in the pound seat? Who's got the power there?
The auctioneer or the person selling it?
Right on the money. Why do we think that is?
Because it's a product that's is going to be well sought after and much desired.
Yeah. And there's only one, right? So
Yeah.
it's got what an economist would call scarcity value. There's only one, and all the value, so all the power, assuming all other things are equal, like there's liquidity in the market.
Sorry to interrupt. Would it not be like the person who are ready to buy it will be powerful?
Well, now that's interesting, Ravi, and I'm really glad you mentioned that. But
The reason I ask is, if none of the audience are ready to pay for it, the auction doesn't progress.
Well, there will be a reserve in place, and so that I mean, you are right, of course, Ravi, that there is an element of power with the audience because somebody's got to have the money. But there are 3,000 billionaires in the world and counting. I don't think any of them are on this call, but there are 3,000 billionaires in the world. This is so there's a big marketing push from Sotheby's, and they've all got their black digital Rolodexes, and they're going to be having a marketing campaign and all the rest of it, and all the hype is going to come across to I don't know, a Saturday evening or a Saturday lunchtime in New York, so they can get all the news out all at the same time, create a big splash. So I would argue, yes, of course, Ravi, someone's got to have the money, and it went for 450 million in the end. But I'm going to come down, and again, this is perception. There's probably no right or wrong answers, but there is a balance of probability. I'm going to come down on Michael's side here, that the real power is probably exercised by the auctioneer, assuming everyone else has done their work. There's either billionaires in the audience in person or on the line, representatives of people that have got, you know, even deeper pockets than Lincolnshire, Tim, 450 million and prepared to spend it. I'm going to argue that the auctioneer on that occasion had the power because of scarcity, what the economists would call scarcity. Right, got another one for you. Richard III, synonymous with York, of course, which is the centre of the universe. Well, mine anyway. Now we probably and Ravi, forgive me if you're not familiar with this story, but Richard III is famous for uttering a certain sentence. Anyone care to guess what that sentence is? Right, it's my horse, my
I should
kingdom.
ask my son. He'll be more familiar with this.
Right, there you go, Ravi. Okay, my horse, my kingdom for a horse. He was, as legend goes, back in the 12th century or thereabouts. He uttered those words, the Battle of Bosworth. So if you can imagine the scene, riding his horse into the opposing army at the Battle of Bosworth. He was dismounted and surrounded by the other army, so King Richard III is on the ground. You can imagine the scene, surrounded by all these warriors, and the legend is he uttered the words, he shouted the words, I'm sure, my horse, my kingdom for a horse. Now he was in really difficult situation there. He's about to die, but he was prepared to offer his entire kingdom for someone who would give him a horse and get the heck out of there. Now, okay, it's an interesting story, but the so what around that is, it was only in that moment that he would have made that offer because of the conditions that he found himself in. The day before, he wouldn't have made that offer because there's no need to make that offer. So this is about the needs of the people around the table and in the audience. And the day after, of course, he wouldn't have been able to make the offer because he wouldn't have lasted through the battle. So these are the dynamics. So the relative power here is probably in the eyes of the army, and so he had to give a bigger deal than he would normally do for a horse because he was in that much need. Okay, right. So who's in the pound seat now when it comes around to cleaning house? I'm not going to get anyone to answer that, but that's a more personal, perhaps, view of who's in the pound seat. And you may decide, actually, do you know what? We're gonna get someone else to do that. But that's a decision and negotiation that's probably closer to heart, assuming we're not going to give our kingdom for a horse or buying the latest Da Vinci discovery. Okay, right. So that's the principle of being in the pound seat. So how do you know, and your products and service, of course, we've talked about being in the room with a prospective customer and where the balance of power likely is. Now, most people would argue, unless you've got the luxury of scarcity, like with the Leonardo da Vinci painting, the customer probably has some sort of power over you because you want their cash. That's a fairly simple explanation. There are obviously, I'll just give you a couple of examples there, which are real life, and there will be other exceptions to that rule. But generally, that's probably the dynamic. And if the customer's got their wits about them, there'll be two or three, and if the deal's valuable enough, there'll be two or three other sort of suitors. I know we're in danger of running out of time. So I'm going to motor on through this, but that's generally the generally held view. So how do you get to be in the pound seat? And the number one, you've got to be preferred. That seems bleeding obvious. So all the work is done up front. Remember, when does negotiation start? Starts at the very beginning. Tim, you and me lined up on that. Michael, you're not wrong. There is a moment at which that has relevance at the start of the formal negotiations, but much of it starts at the beginning, and rather you're right on the money there as well. So have the preferred value proposition. In other words, be the solution that the customer wants to buy. That puts you naturally in the pound seat. How do you do that? You know everything about that client's needs. And we talked about a couple of sessions ago, we talked about not just the spoken need, but because of the rapport and the trust that you've been able to build up with that customer, they've told you stuff that they haven't told anyone else. And that makes you really powerful because of your, shall we say, expertise in that particular area. And also confidence. If anyone familiar with the world of poker, and I only know enough to be dangerous, is that your confidence in your position it probably trumps many other things. It certainly trumps reality. And we've talked about this in sessions 1, 4, and 5 being last week. And having the support of the right people in the deal, going back to Bill Richardson, involved in client, he had power because Clinton, President of the United States, gave him that power and was consistent in the way that it applied. Nobody could get to Clinton unless they went through Bill Richardson first, and that actually gave them both power in that scenario. So that's how to be in the pound seat. Sorry, right on the money now. So I'll understand if anyone's got a 1:30 they need to jump off for, but I think we're in the last 3 minutes. Any comments on what you've heard so far? Good. Oh yeah, no, your best possible result. Okay, so yeah, best possible result. Ideally, we want to make this much margin, but there needs to be a minimum acceptable result as well. So we've got a ceiling with a small c and a floor absolutely with a capital F, a ceiling and a floor. So we cannot, under any circumstances, do a deal if it goes below this margin. And I'm suggesting margin is only one component of a deal. It could be they want the product next week. Well, we can't possibly do that. That could be another point of negotiation as well. But so knowing what your best possible result is and your minimum acceptable result, that would be a way of framing that negotiation. Okay, right. Here's one, just quick one. So we're going to go in the garage. We've done this massive deal. Let's say we sold a massive playground to the Amdanis, who've just had a $600 million wedding, by the way, for Ishtar, I think. Ravi, you may know more about that than me, but anyway, we're going to go celebrate. We're going to buy ourselves a little car. I kind of like this. This Bentley Continental, a couple of years old, not too much mileage. Sticker price in the garage, 225,000. But because we're confident, and maybe we're from Lincolnshire, I'll give you a bit of slack here, Tim. Maybe we're from Lincolnshire, our pockets are very deep. We're going to go in with a bit of a cheeky offer. We're going to go in and we've done our research on Auto Trader or whatever the Rightmove or whatever the online sites are going to be. We know 225, given that mileage, given that year, given that condition, we know 225 is a reasonable price. But we're going to be cheeky. We're gonna offer £180,000 for that car. Okay, so just want to ask you this in the last 1 minute or so. Let's say, Tim, you offer £180,000 and Ravi, the salesperson, says, you've got a deal. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about that?
If I offered 180,000 and I and they said yes, I'd be feeling very, very proud of myself.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. There's no right and wrong answers here.
If I offered 225,000 but I'd gone in with the cheeky offer of 180 and I'm £45,000 better off.
Yeah. I think I would be feeling really happy for a couple of minutes and then I'd be thinking, oh, I wonder if I could have offered 170.
Now we're getting to Yorkshire. Ravi, what about you? If you went in, you offered 180, salesperson said, yeah, you got a deal. What would you be thinking?
If he outright said yes, I will have mixed feelings about it. One, as Tim said, oh, I should offer. Did I offer probably more than what it's worth? That's one feeling I might have. And the second feeling is there anything wrong with the car? Without saying anything, with a published average price of 225, he sold it just right, outright for 180. Because, yeah, I think, is there something wrong or something doesn't feel right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now we've got 4 experienced people in the world of business and the world of negotiation. And I've just put a real, by the way, it's not my car, just in case anyone's wondering, but I know that this happened. Not that particular car, but in principle, Bentley Continental, someone I know has got, and they had that. And those 3 descriptors on the right is exactly how they felt, and that's why I know this is real life in that situation that they were in. So it's not always. And again, we've got to get, this is a 30-minute thing. This module I run normally takes all morning because it's quite involved. But just because you got the best possible price, if you're the buyer, you've got to make them fit as a salesperson. You've got a responsibility to make them feel good about that price. And it's not always by saying yes straight away. They've got to work for the deal. Okay, right. So really interesting. Thank you so much for engaging with that. Next week, we're going to be talking about probably not 50, but I liked the expression 50 Shades of Closing, and we're going to be talking about that. And thank you very much for your input and your full-throated engagement on this. Really appreciate that. If you want a copy of the recording, just drop me. Well, Aisha will give you drop me a line on my LinkedIn, DM me something like that with an email address, and we'll get you a copy of the recording when it's available. But until next week, Oh, let me just come off of share a second. There we go. Right. So thank you very much for that. Until next week, give me a shout if you've got any other questions. I'm always looking for more stuff to talk about and engage about. But it's good to see you on camera. And Ravi, thank you for coming in from where are you in? Where are you at the minute, Ravi?
I'm based in Coventry.
Okay, right, brilliant. Okay, brilliant. So thanks for coming in, and I appreciate your engagement and your point of view very much so.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Yeah, it's a
You're
pleasure.
very welcome. Very welcome. Good to see you guys. Take care. Bye now.